Okay, now we're recording. Cool. Sticky note. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to be doing a Rick and Morty API. We're going to add in some page forward and page back logic as well, and we might start with that. That way we can cover useEffect and useState a little bit better without going into any of the rendering or anything else. We'll start with everything on the console log and then show how we can start to apply that to JSX. So start with kind of a JavaScript approach. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of show how things connect inside of here. So this is just a Create React app. There's plenty of online tutorials on how to get a Create React app going. I'm not going to go into that today just for brevity's sake. So if you'll notice, we have this doc type, HTML language, this head here, UTF-8, favicon, viewport, meta name, theme color, blah, blah, blah. There's all kinds of stuff in here, some comments about manifest.json and things like that. So a lot of people ask, well, where does this come from? I mean, does React just generate it? Actually, no, it doesn't do anything. Create React app has a index.html file in here that from the factory is set up to allow things to come in. So like if I go in here and I put like say another div in here, div, and a p tag and say hello world. Maybe move that up top, and I save that, key bindings. So if you'll notice now it reloaded this and now we have a hello world in here. So this HTML file is exactly what you would have in anything else. It's being served up just like anything else. So we're just going to kind of blow all of this away and start a new HTML file from scratch. I'm just hitting exclamation point tab and changing our document title to something that's other than document, like Rick and Morty API. Sorry, my keyboard's a little loud right by the microphone. And if I save this, it's going to crash. So if we go to our console, it's gonna freak out here. And it says uncaught error, create root, target container is not a DOM element. So if we're looking at our elements here, everything is still here. So there's a script, a head tag with all of the stuff over here, just like we expect. This one's a content IE equals edge. Who knows why that's in there? And there's nothing in our body here. So we could go in and do the we can do a hello world here. I keep hitting Windows key. So we're able to edit this just like we would, like live server or something else like that. So the server is working, it's updating this HTML page. Everything's great, except now we've ruined the React app because it has no place to connect into here. It has no place to mount the React application into this file. So if we go into the source folder and we look at our index.js file, you're going to notice that they have a document get element by ID root. So we're actually looking for an ID of root in here. So we could do something like ID equals root. I did it again. And now we're kind of back in business, but what if I didn't want to have this as, say, like an idea group? What if we wanted to have this a class of container? That's usually what I do, but notice how it still doesn't, it hasn't replaced this hello world in here with the React app. So we could even go in here and do something more semantic, like something like that, right? So we don't even need a no script tag or anything else. We just put it in here because this is going to get overwritten by React whenever it mounts. So going back to last week, we could just do like a query selector in here. And then change this from root to dot container. We're looking for a class of container. Save it, and it should mount again. Compiled successfully. So if you notice, this is that's pretty much all that you really are using from last week, except for some of the concepts of container, or not container, components, and getting things from like a GET request. So I'm just going to leave the rest of this the same. I sometimes I'll dig into it a little deeper. I think I'm going to get rid of the CSS file here because I don't really like a lot of this stuff in here. Actually, I guess I'm going to go ahead and clean this as well. Let's see if I broke it. Hey, I haven't broken it. So we're now down to some very basic. There's nothing here. It's just going to render our application and mount it to query selector container. Hopefully that makes sense. Did I lose anybody? Wow, the house is shaking. We got a jet flying.
Why do you get rid of the use strict, like the wrapper?
Yeah, because I could. There's reasons to have them there, and I'm not using them. So not really worth my time investigating. We're just showing the very basics of React, showing that I don't really need much of anything to make it work. You know, like you could put this all on like one line and it would still work just fine. Wrong one. Hitting the Windows S key. I've been working on a Mac all day and copying and pasting, and the key mappings are backwards for a PC. So now what this is doing is this is mounting up this this app.js here. I'm going to rename this because I'm going to have it as a JSX file. So the difference between a JS file and a JSX file is that the linter in VS Code treats it a little bit differently. So if I go in and let's get rid of some of this stuff here. We'll go save it. And let's say that I did a p tag, for example. I just have to hit p tab. And it gives me a p tab, where if it's a JavaScript file, it doesn't give me those abilities to quickly type out something like hello world, for example. So now we have a hello world. It's centered because we still have this CSS file. We also don't need a logo.svg. Yeah. So now we just have like some very basic, you know, normal HTML document. You could write it literally like HTML here. So, you know, if you wanted to do, you know, a header, main, footer, you could, and then do something like just like you would do normal HTML that we learned last unit. So nav, and you can do a anchor times, I don't know, 4 anchor tags, and put in whatever you want, like something like that. No, not actually go anywhere, but you can write all the HTML you want in here, and it'll work just like you expect it to. So it's kind of like having a little web server for rendering out JSX. So all of this stuff, it looks like HTML, but in the background, this is basically doing document.createElement div, document.className equals a string value of app. And it says document.createElement header, document.append child, div append child header, document create element nav. So all that stuff that we had to do with making components in last week, this is doing all of that by doing it this way. But it looks like HTML. So let's get into doing a little bit of state and use effects. So if I just did something like const my variable is, I'm sorry, equals Brian, right? Save it. Nothing's exploded. It's still rendering everything. And what if I wanted to have like an H1 tag? If I wanted to put this variable inside of there, I have to break out of JSX mode back into JavaScript mode by using these curly brackets. So we'll do, and I'll just put in my variable. So if I save this, you'll notice we have a header 1 over here of Brian, and I can inspect that element. And you can see we have a block level element, header 1, Brian. Fantastic. And I can change this here, something like that. And there's my name. So we can inject data based off of any type of variable, but what if we wanted to start to change this variable? So the problem is that with the way that React is going to work is it's going to be rendering this page with the data that's here. And if we wanted to, say, put a button in there that changes the variable. So we'll say, let my variable equal Brian Haig. And let's say that we put in a button. And we'll do, we'll just call it change name. And inside of this button, if somebody clicks on this, we want it to run this function. So we'll just do my variable is equal to, we'll use Aaron. Select all. All right, so first thing, that didn't work the way that I wanted it to. Oh, we need to, Aaron is a string value. Keep hitting all. All right, so if I click on this button, you would expect it to change Brian Haig to Aaron because we just set this my variable to Aaron, right? So if I click this, nothing happens. And this is where we get into why we have useState. So let's go ahead and put in an import. And since useState is not a default export inside of React, we have to wrap it in curly braces like that. And let's kind of refactor this a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this a const. And we're going to do my variable. And then we're going to do useState and wrap our initial state with this. So if I save this, so showing this, and if I go back over here to the console and I click this change name, it's gonna complain. So it says assignment to a constant variable, and I could even try to make this, you know, like a let, right? And so if I click this change name here, it still doesn't work because we're not telling React that something has happened. We're just doing it. So what we want is a setter. So we're going to do a set my variable. So when you look at this this format here, notice how we have this array notation inside of here with 2 comma separated values. So this first one is element 0 in an array, and the second one is element 1 in an array. So what's happening is useState, I'm passing in a string value that is becoming this my variable here. So that is an array that useState is returning to line 5 here. And we're taking element 0 and turning it into my variable. And set my variable is the thing that's going to tell React that we have changed something, so that we know that there has been a change and we want to see, we want it to re-render to the screen. So down here, what we would do is, instead of my variable equals, all we need to do is invoke my variable with whatever we want to change. So this is the same as doing, you know, this useState Brian Haig, but now it's my variable Aaron. So let's save that. So now if I click this button, now let's see what we broke. My variable is, oh, sorry, it's not my variable, set my variable, sorry. Arrow's going on a nice roll there. All right, so now if I click change name, what's going to happen is it's already rendered the page. When I click this change name, it's going to run this function that replaces my variable equals Brian Haig with my variable equals Aaron, but it does other things in the background that says, hey, I want you to display something on the page. Something has changed and I want you to adjust the page. So if I click on change name, it's going to say, hey, React, I want you to do something to the screen, to the DOM. And it changes it to Aaron. So that's where state comes in, and the reason why we kind of need to follow this, this example here is it allows us to render new information whenever an event occurs. So what if I console log my variable, and we'll go ahead and put in a string here. a variable space, put a comma here. So what this is going to do is this is going to console log my variable and then whatever's in my variable. So you'll find that I use a lot of console logs. So my variable is currently Brian Haig. If I click change name, you'll notice that my variable changed. So the only time that this is happening is if it reruns this function app. React is smart enough not to run this, but to only run this and repaint the screen. So anytime that you see this my variable, it's basically saying new render. So something like that. It says new render. Now my variable is this. So if I change that name, new render, now my variable is Aaron. If I refresh the page, it goes back to its initial state, which is what was passed into the useState. So change name, new render, now my variable is Aaron, and it's always going to be Aaron because it's not smart. So let's get into what if I wanted to bring in this information from, say, an Axios request, right? So we've got an Axios call and it's returning something and we're updating this by using the set my variable. So that's where we're going to be using a useEffect. So useEffect is kind of a funky creature. So first off, it is a function. Inside of that function, you take two things. The thing that you want to run, which in this case is just a function, and something that will make the useEffect function, this and here, run again. So anything that happens in here happens at the end of the render. So if I console log, we'll do this as Sparta. And let's clear that and refresh. So if you'll notice, it says new render. Now my variable is Brian Haig, and it says this is Sparta. Fantastic. So what this has done is this has run this code at the very end after this has rendered the page. So Brian Haig is already on the screen and it has then run this code here. So what I can do in here is I could do a set my variable to Aaron. So if you'll notice, let's go and refresh. So it does a new render. It's set my variable to Aaron. Oh no, this thing is not giving me, I'm going to have to make another zoom. Weird. Yeah, it's giving me a 40-minute time limit on my Zoom because they're, oh well, whatever. Gotta love IT. So it goes into, it starts with Brian Haig, console logs the new render, my new variable is Brian Haig. It renders all of this stuff to the screen, including my variable here. Then it goes into this useEffect last. The useEffect then sets the variable to Aaron. Console logs out, this is Sparta. And then it then knows, because we've made this change to set my variable, it says, hey, React, I want to change something on the page. It then reruns app and re-renders this page. So now what we've got is our console log will then say new render. Now my variable is Aaron, and then it will re-render this page with the new my variable. So it goes through all of those steps just to change out one little variable. Any questions? You guys can come off mute.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Did that make any more sense?
Oh yeah, just the more I see it, the more it makes sense.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is a lot of people don't see that it says, hey, you know what, we're going to re-render. And they see it as like, oh, well, it just does it, right? But the use effect is there to, instead of do this for us, it's there to guard against a side effect of basically just looping. Because this set my variable, it will hit this every single time if there's not a use effect here. So like if we just, move, set my variable up here, it's just going to loop forever. And we don't want that. So what the use effect does is it waits until it's rendered and it runs it exactly one time. What I might do is, have, another slice of state that goes into here. I think we've got enough time to do that. I'm going to have to drop another link here in about 6 minutes, but we're going to do click, set, click. We're going to use a state of true, why not? And we're going to put click in here. Right. So we're going to go back over here and put a button. And we're going to say, click me. And this will be an on-click, new function. And we're just going to do set click. And we're going to set this to the opposite of click. So that's a toggle. So if it's true, it becomes false. If it's false, it becomes true. And it replaces that value. So if I save this, and and we're looking here more than anything. So we'll clear this, refresh the page. And so it's done the new render. And if I click this, you'll see it do this is Sparta, and then new render. My variable is now Aaron. So it has gone through and run this code again here. So if I click it again, it has run the code again. So if you put something into here, it reruns that use effect. So that can come in pretty handy for if we had something like say page and set page. Let's say we had page 1, and then we'll do page. So now we've got a console log that will say what page we're on. So what if we have, instead of a click me button, we have a back button. Where is click? 14, oops. Okay, So now anytime that we change this slice of state page, it's going to rerun useEffect. So if I click the back button, page is 0, -1, -2, -3, -4. And then let's make a forward button. Instead of -1, we'll do +1. So now if I go forward, you can see the page changes up and back. Pretty interesting or not really?
I like it.
Okay. I am going to, since it's got 2 minutes and 42 seconds, because I guess IT took my Pro Zoom away. I'm going to drop another link and I'll see both of you in a couple minutes.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Okay. I'll stop sharing and end the video.